Malbush Talmud Chochem, the attire of a Torah scholar. What should be that attire? What should it look like on many levels? Malbish Noe Vinoki. It should be pleasant looking and it should be clean. It should not be soiled. Because since he has a representation of what he is, therefore he has to be seen and perceived in a very pleasant role. He has to be seen through a positive lens because he represents something. He represents the Torah. So it should be pleasant and clean. It's forbidden that on his garment there should be any stain or any type of uncleanliness due to some fatty food which absorbed into the material. Although it may be found by others, but regarding this person, because of who he is, it's unacceptable. It's not appropriate. He should not wear attire that regal garments that people of special status wear. Because again, he has to display a humility. Such as garments made of gold with gold thread, or purple, which he gains attention. People notice it. He should be more under the radar. He should be not noticed. That's an expression of his humility. But yet he should not wear the garment which a poor person wears, which indicates maybe, it's disgraceful. He's a beggar. You see that Talmud Chochem, that Torah scholar, as what? A needy person. He's a ward of the community. It's not appropriate. Shumavaze eslovshov, because he's disgracing those by wearing those garments. Meaning middle class garments which are pleasant. Not garments that call attention, not positive, not negative, not to indicate pompousness, regalness, although he is regal, and something which would indicate something which is inappropriate to indicate he's a beggar. Now, there's a famous story, and the Chofetz Chaim explains it with allegory. The prophet says that if Torah would not be in effect continuously, day and night, the world would not continue. The only reason why God wills existence is because somewhere in existence, Torah is being studied. But if there should ever be a moment where Torah is not being studied anywhere on this planet, the world would revert back to pre-existence, based on the Zohar. Chofetz Chaim cites a Zohar, which explains the verse that if it should be for a moment, there should be a void, no Torah, the world reverts back to pre-existence. So he explains it with an allegory. And I mentioned this in the past. Hopefully you'll remember it well enough that you'll recall the allegory when I will say it, that there was this king who had one of a kind of palace, ornate, regal in every sense of the word. And when they first came out with the steamboat, he wanted to have a replica of his palace built on the steamboat. So when he goes onto the boat, it should be as if he's entering in his palace, a smaller scale of his palace. The entry room, the mirrors, the furniture, everything should reflect the same decor as his palace. And it took a few years to build this palace on this boat. And they're finally ready for the maiden voyage. of the steamboat. So the officer of the boat is dressed in this very sophisticated type of captain's uniform with his hat, starched, everything, which is befitting to greet a king. And he welcomes the king onto the boat. And the king goes from room to room. He's like amazed. Literally a replica of his palace. The dining area, the sitting area, the entry room, everything's exactly the same. The artwork on the walls. And now they go for the maiden voyage, and the boat just like glides over the water. And the king is amazed. He's never experienced, doesn't feel any of the surf, doesn't feel the rocking of the boat, and just skimming over the water. He looks out the window, he sees the paddles turning, and he says to the captain, I understand what causes the boat to move, the paddles moving. What gives the power for the paddles to move? So he starts explaining to the king that in the bows of the boat, there are turbines, and there are ovens there, furnaces, and the men shoveling all day long fuel into the ovens, which create the steam, and the steam generates the turbines, and that causes the paddles to turn. So the king says, I'd like to see it. He says, I don't think it's appropriate for the king to go to the bows of the boat because of the degree of temperature. Besides, because they use coal. They fuel the furnaces with coal, and there's a lot of carbon. It's not clean. He says, no, I insist, I must see. He goes down to the bows of the boat, and they're men literally stripped to the waist because the heat is so intense, and they're red from the fire. It's so hot. And all day they're shoveling the fuel into the furnace. Due to the soot, the white men, they look like black. They're black. It's so embedded in their skin. The walls are covered with inches of this soot. The floor is covered. The ceiling's covered. The king sees this. He becomes incensed. In my palace, there should be such filth. I will not tolerate it. And he gives the order. He says to the king, I want immediately the walls of this boat should be broken out. So the captain's like taken aback. He says, Your Majesty, if we break out these walls, you know what happens? The boat goes down. The king was not rational. He was so incensed. It doesn't make a difference. Just break out the walls. You break out the walls, the ship sinks. What keeps the world afloat? The Torah study. If not for my confidence, which is in effect day and night, continuously, unceasingly, the world with God will not will existence. If it should cease for a moment, the world reverts back to pre-existence. You go into a study hall, and you see what we call a Talmud Chacham, not a Torah sage. Talmud Chacham studying. He's not wearing a Brioni suit, or he's not wearing a Petrocelli suit, what they used to sell, which they used to say, you want to feel like $1,000,000, wear a Petrocelli. He's not wearing Gucci shoes. None of that. He's wearing a simple suit. Nothing to write home about. Maybe it's even a little worn, but it's clean. And this rich man walks in with his silk handkerchief in the pocket, with his whatever it is. He looks at this pitiful looking Jew, seems to be malnourished, and he's sitting hunched over the books and studying. And he looks down at that person with the most condescending look. So Chafetz Chaim says, you see that person you're looking at? If not for him, you wouldn't exist. He's shoveling the fuel into the furnaces. He's keeping the ship afloat. And if you ever remove him from existence, there is no existence. There's an expression, don't judge a book by its cover. There's an allegory given by, I forgot who says it. You have a person, there's no check he can't write. He has tremendous holdings. And now the king falls ill, and he needs the services of a very specific physician, doctor. Doctor doesn't have two nickels to rub together. And the rich man with all his holdings can't help the king. All the money he has, it doesn't compare to what the king has. You could offer nothing to the king. The king is not impressed with you. The king's impressed with one thing. Who has the remedy to heal the king? That the king should recover. But the man, all he owns is that white coat that he wears with his name embroidered on the front of the coat. Doesn't make a difference. It's not what he looks like. It's not what he has. It's who he is. He has the answer. He has the solution. He has the remedy. He has the medication. He has the prescription. He knows what to prescribe. Identically. You have to, of course, present yourself pleasant, humility, but not to be viewed and looked down upon like a beggar. Certain people, they like to own people. Own people. And they'll give you a gift and they believe afterwards they own you. And every time they snap their fingers, you jump to the tune. A Talmud Chacham has to maintain his dignity. Who is the wealthy man? He's satisfied with your lot. Thank you, but no thank you. And it's not a pride. It's not a pride. I have a benefactor that you can't compete with my benefactor. Thank God. My benefactor needs no assistance to assist him to cover whatever the needs are. It was meant that it's needed, he could provide it. As I always say, there's no check that God can't write. But somebody says, but I want to help you. Thank God. I have my benefactor helps me. Whatever I need, he provides. Don't need more than that. And if you do take, and you allow this person to believe that he himself is making the ship float to a degree you're participating and you're accomplice to Chil Hashem, because you're giving this man a misunderstanding what the reality is. So how does a Talmud Chacham, how does he dress? What kind of attire does he wear? Pleasant attire. Clean. Nothing regal. He shouldn't draw attention. But it shouldn't be the garment of a beggar, of a very poor man, which indicates he's destitute, because that's inappropriate. Under the radar, but appropriate. If you notice this as a special person. And if his garment is not clean, the Talmud says, based on the verse, it's called the Chil Hashem. And that person represents Torah, he deserves that his life should be taken. Because he's a disgrace to God. It's inappropriate. It was known to Chazon Ish that at his time, he was the leading Torah sage in the world. His name was Rabbi Karelitz, blessed memory, Zecher Tzaddik Livrocha. If you saw pictures of him, the man didn't weigh 100 pounds. The clothing he wore were very simple. They were rabbinical. The hat that he wore was the same hat he was married in. He had one hat his whole life. And he's wearing the hat when he's in his 70s. He passed away, he was in the mid-70s. So they asked him. But the Talmud says that if you have a hat which is not clean, the Torah scholars is liable for disgracing God's name? He says, no. It's a question of cleanliness. If it's worn, there's nothing being worn. So the hat's worn. It's not exactly in perfect shape, but it's clean. If it's not clean, which you could make the difference to make it clean, then you failed. But that you're not wearing something which is right out of the box, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not the most updated style. Nothing wrong with that. But I'll give you an example. The Chazon Ish, he didn't have to dress for a role. He had to dress in a way that's appropriate for him. But let's say you have a person, he's involved in the community, let's say an outreach, and he meets people, and he interacts with people. And people do judge a person by his presence, by his clothing, by his body language. You have to display body languages, of course, which is humility and appropriate, and the garments have to be appropriate. But it has to fit the bill, so to say, to function the role that you're meant to function, to interact with the people, that they shouldn't be distracted to say, what does this man have to offer? But rather, he has plenty to offer. Because although he looks like us, he's a lot more than we are. Here we're speaking about on a very simple level. You're a Torah scholar confined to the base measures, to the study hall, delving and plumbing the depths of Torah. There's no reason. As long as you dress with humility, humble, not to attract attention, it's good enough. You don't need more than that. His flesh should not be seen from under his clothing. Come on, big day, Apishton, Akalam Biosachosim Mitzrayim. You know, the Mishnah tells us the high priest on Yom Kippur, when he would officiate and go into the inner sanctums of the temple, he would wear only white garments, the white vestments, and they were made of linen. So the community, the Beis Hamikdash temple provided a certain allowance. But if he wanted to add to that allowance out of his own money, he can. To wear better quality linen vestments. So it says one high priest was very wealthy, and he had vestments made for him. No matter all the specific vestments, it was of such fine linen that when you put them on, you're able to see his flesh. They were almost like they were so fine, you were able to see through the garment. So they said, you know something? Inappropriate. As much as you want to esteem the mitzvah, to spend a fortune, to have the best quality linen, but if in fact your flesh is going to be seen through the garment, it's inappropriate. Meaning, modesty, your flesh has to be covered. Your body, when you wear the garment, even although you're a man, still, there's a modesty. In the old days, people, they would allow their garments to be longer, and as they walked, the material dragged on the ground. To show it means nothing. No, it's only money, as they say, money. So they would allow their garment to drag behind them on like you have a wedding gown, you have a train behind it. She's, the bride is the guest of honor. Everybody sees her. What's the whole idea of the train behind her? And sometimes she has bridesmaids holding the train up. You understand? The train is like 25 feet long. And they're all walking behind her holding the train. What's the train? It's an indication to show she's special because she's the bride. For a Talmud Chacham to wear this kind of clothing where the material drags on the ground, it's the behavior of a pompous person. That's pompousness. Well, big degasia ruach, those are the garments of people who are with inflated egos, arrogance, el akevo. Your garment should go only till you what? Until your ankle, or until the bottom of until your heel, nothing longer than that. Obesiachelo ad roshet bosov. And the sleeve should go no further than the tips of your fingers. Shalshel taliso. You should not throw your garment over your shoulder, because that's the way, again, a pompous person walks. When you wore this cloak, they would wear the cloak in a certain way. On Shabbos, you're permitted to wear it this way. If you don't have another garment to put on, in the olden days, if you ever saw pictures of pre-World War Europe in the ghettos, especially when the Jews were put in the ghettos, there was such poverty. Even if a child wore shoes or people wore shoes, you had patches on top of patches. Not only did you have a patch on the sole, on the top of the shoe, where the leather was, you also had patches. It was like tattered and had to be repaired endless times over. For a Talmid Chacham to wear this kind of shoe, it's inappropriate, it's disgraceful. But that's only in the summertime, because people's shoes were not covered with mud. If actually he's poor and it doesn't display anything negative because it's covered with mud, people don't see, it's okay. Would it be appropriate for a Talmid Chacham to wear cologne? Perfume. It's a Gemara. Lo yetze mevusam b'shuk. You shouldn't wear perfume when a man, Talmid Chacham, when he goes out into a public area. Lo begodim b'somim. In the old days, how did they actually? It was always a question of body odor. So the garments. So they would actually burn incense or perfume, and they would smoke the garment over the perfume as it rised. Would dry the fume would the smoke would go, and the perfume would be absorbed into the garment. It's inappropriate for Talmid Chacham with this kind of garment that was perfumed, a perfumed garment. Lo yosim bosim bisaro, putting perfume in his hair. Aval moshach besoro bebosem ilahavrius azum. But what about to put deodorant on your skin, on your flesh, that you permitted? Why? So the Gemara explains it this way: something that you wear on your skin, there's sweat. There's the sweat and the oil. Immediately, that tones down the intensity of the smell. Anything you put on the hair or the clothing, it retains its intensity. The Gemara says that a person who was homosexual, a man wore perfume, he was suspect that he was a homosexual. Why? Because by having perfume, he would attract attention of other men. Otherwise, why would he wear perfume? A woman, it's her way to wear perfume, to be attractive. But a man, what are you wearing perfume for? Cleanliness, go wash your garments. Why put perfume? So therefore, God forbid, a Talmid Chacham should be suspect of this kind of behavior. So on his skin, immediately the oil and the sweat will immediately cause the perfume to evaporate, lose its intensity. But on the clothing, on the hair, where you don't have that dilution of sweat and oil, people could say, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. This guy, you don't know what he is. He's trying to attract attention. He's looking for customers. Should not go out at night by himself. You see a person at Talmid Chacham walking at night himself. We're talking with people don't walk in the street at night. What's he doing out? It's quiet. He has a woman somewhere waiting for him. He's going to have some kind of illicit relationship. Unless it was a time that people would go study with their partners in the study hall, so they'll attribute it. But let's say you don't find people walking the street at that hour at night. What's he doing out at night? The answer is he has someone waiting for him. As they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. But we don't want that you create smoke. So if the people study and they go to the study hall at this hour and you see him, okay, so it's attributed to that. But if you don't have that, what's he doing out? Elim Kain, Kol Elu Bnei Hachshad. All this is because he's a big suspect. He's suspect of inappropriate behavior. The perfume on the hair, on the garment, inappropriate behavior. You're going out at night where people don't go out at night unless they have a woman waiting somewhere for a Talmud Chacham, even if he has a reason to go out. He should not go out by himself. Going out by himself causes us to what? That he's suspect of something inappropriate. There's an attitude. People say, let them think what they want. I'm confident enough, let them think what they want. If you have a certain level of representation, you have a responsibility to preserve your honor. It has nothing with you personally, it's what you represent. And if any way people speak negatively or pejoratively about a person of your caliber or what you represent, you're not disgracing yourself, you're disgracing what you represent. I'll give you an example. The Talmud says that if a Torah scholar chooses to waive his honor, he has a right to waive his honor. It's based on a verse in Tehillim and Psalms. What about for a Torah scholar to allow himself to be disgraced, that he has no right? Honor is one thing. Honor is something that's earned. I have a right to pass on what I earned. But to go denigrate yourself, to be disgraced, since you represent Torah, you have no right to disgrace the Torah. Give you an example. And it's it. You need somebody to take out the trash. And somebody says, Rabbi, please take out the trash. You're not permitted. You want to take it out, nobody else is there and nobody sees is one thing. But you should take it out where somebody else could take it out because of what you represent, it's inappropriate. That's called you're disgracing with your representation. Not permitted to do it. Because that's called disgraceful. But I have a right. No, you have no right. If you have that level of representation, you have to behave a certain way. Here also, let them talk. Let them think what they want to think. My wife trusts me, It has nothing to do with what your wife trusts, not trust. It's what people say about a person of what you represent. Therefore, it's unacceptable.